Scientists show how gratitude literally alters the human heart and the molecular structure of the human brain. This is by Steve McCamley, Collective Spark. Gratitude is a funny thing. In some parts of the world, somebody who gets a clean drink of water, some food, or a worn-out pair of shoes can be extremely grateful. Meanwhile, somebody else who has all the necessities they need to live can be found complaining about something or everything. What we have today is what we once wanted before, but there is a lingering belief out there that obtaining material possessions is the key to happiness. Sure, this may be true, but that happiness is temporary. The truth is that happiness is an inside job. It's a matter of perspective, and in a world where we're constantly made to feel like we're lacking and always wanting more, it can be difficult to achieve or experience actual happiness. Many of us are always looking towards external factors to experience joy and happiness, when really it's all related to internal work. This is something science is just starting to grasp as well, as shown by research coming from UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center. According to them, quote, having an attitude of grateful changes the molecular structure of the brain, keeps gray matter functioning, and makes us healthier and happier. And when you feel happiness, the central nervous system is affected. You are more peaceful, less reactive, and less resistant. Now that's a really cool way of taking care of your well-being, end quote. There are many studies showing that people who count their blessings tend to be far happier and experience less depression. For one study, researchers recruiting people with mental health difficulties, including people suffering from anxiety and depression. The study involved nearly 300 adults who were randomly divided into 3 groups. This study came from the University of California at Berkeley. All groups received counseling services, but the first group was also instructed to write one letter of gratitude to another person every week for 3 weeks, whereas the second group was asked to write about their deepest thoughts and feelings about negative experiences. The third group did not do any writing activity. That was like a control group, in other words. So what did they find? Compared to the participants who wrote about negative experiences or only receiving counseling, those who wrote gratitude letters reported significantly better mental health for up to 12 weeks after the writing exercise ended. This suggests that gratitude writing can be beneficial not just for healthy, well-adjusted individuals, but also for those who struggle with mental health concerns. In fact, it seems particular practicing gratitude on top of receiving psychological counseling carries greater benefits than counseling alone, even when that gratitude practice is brief. Now, previously, a study on the gratitude conducted by Robert Emmons, PhD at the University of California, Davis, and his colleague Mike McCullough at the University of Miami randomly assigned participants to be given one of the 3 tasks. Each week, participants kept a short journal, a diary. One group described 5 things they were grateful for that had occurred in the past week. Another group recorded daily troubles from the previous week that displeased them, and the neutral group was asked to list 5 events or circumstances that affected them, but they were not told whether to focus on the positive or the negative. 10 weeks later, participants in the gratitude group felt better about their lives as a whole and were a full 25% happier than the troubled group. They reported fewer health complaints and exercised an average of 1.5 hours more. Researchers from Berkeley identified how gratitude might actually work on our minds and bodies. They provided 4 insights for their research suggesting what causes the psychological benefits of gratitude. Gratitude unshackles us from toxic emotions. Gratitude helps even if you don't share it. Gratitude's benefits take time and practice. You might not feel it right away. Gratitude has lasting effects on the brain. The brain part is very interesting. The researchers at Berkeley used an fMRI scanner to measure brain activity, while people from each group did a pay-it-forward task. During the task, the participants were given money by a nice person, quote unquote. This person's only request was that they pass on the money to someone if they felt grateful. They did this because they wanted to distinguish between actions motivated by gratitude and actions driven by other motivations like obligation, guilt, or what other people think. This is important because you can't fake gratitude. You actually have to feel it. If you don't feel grateful or practice trying to feel grateful by taking the necessary steps like keeping a gratitude journal, you may not experience as much joy and happiness. In a world where emotions aren't really taught in school and the importance is put on striving for higher grades, it's not abnormal to have difficulty feeling grateful. This is especially understandable if you've been brought up in the Western world, which is full of consumerism and competition, a world where you're constantly made to feel we're lacking, so we need to strive for more. Participants were asked to rate how grateful they felt towards a person giving them the money and how much they wanted to pay it forward to charitable cause, as well as how guilty they thought they would feel if they didn't help. They were also given questionnaires to measure how grateful they felt in general. Quote, "We found that across the participants, when people felt more grateful, their brain activity was distinct from brain activity related to guilt and the desire to help a cause. More specifically, we found that when people who are generally more grateful gave more money to a cause, they showed greater neural sensitivity in the medial frontal cortex, a brain area associated with learning and decision making. This suggests that people who are more grateful are also more attentive to how they express gratitude. Most interestingly, when we compared those who wrote the gratitude letters with those who didn't, the gratitude letter writers showed greater activation in the medial prefrontal cortex when they experienced gratitude in the MRI scanner. This is striking, as this effect was found 3 months after the letter writing began. This indicates that simply expressing gratitude may have lasting effects on the brain. While not conclusive, this finding suggests that practicing gratitude may help train the brain to be more sensitive to the experience of gratitude down the line, and this could contribute to improved mental health over time. It also is interesting to note that a recent study just discovered a brain network that gives rise to feelings of gratitude. The study could spur future investigations into how these building blocks transform social information into complex emotions. And now, what about the heart? The work and research above is great, but where do we actually experience these feelings? They are clearly not a product of our brain, they're products of our consciousness, and when we feel them, the brain responds. Researchers are now discovering that the heart also responds, and that it might actually be the heart that's responsible for sending these signals to the brain. A group of prestigious and internationally recognized leaders in physics, biophysics, astrophysics, education, mathematics, engineering, cardiology, biofeedback, and psychology, among other disciplines, have been doing some brilliant work over at the Institute of Heart Math. Their work, I'm going to read some of their articles. They also tell us that the human frequency can change the Schumann effect, the Schumann frequency of the Earth to heal it, and we can also, the human frequency through prayer and thought, meditation, can also calm down the sun's solar flares and coronal mass ejections and chaos going on the surface. It's amazing. These are done by Heart Math. They're scientists who conclude through evidence what is taking place. Now, going back to this, their work, among others, many others, Heart Math that is, has proven that when a person is feeling relatively positive, emotions like gratitude, love, or appreciation, the heart beats out a different message, which determines what kind of signals are sent to the brain. Not only that, but because the heart beats out the largest electromagnetic field produced in the body, the Institute has been able to gather a significant amount of data. According to Roland McCratey, PhD and Director of Research at HeartMath, quote, emotional information is actually coded and modulated into these fields. By learning to shift our emotions, we are changing the information coded into the magnetic fields that are radiated by the heart, and that can impact those around us. We are fundamentally and deeply connected with each other and the planet itself. Another great point made below by the Institute, quote, one important way the heart can speak to and influence the brain is when the heart is coherent, experiencing stable, sine wave-like patterns in its rhythms. When the heart is coherent, the body, including the brain, begins to experience all sorts of benefits. Among them are greater mental clarity and ability including better decision-making, end quote. Now, in fact, the heart actually sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends in return to the heart. What's even more amusing is the fact that these heart signals from heart to brain actually have a significant effect on brain function. McCready says, research findings have shown that as we practice heart coherence and radiate love and compassion, our heart generates a coherent electromagnetic wave into the local field environment that facilitates social coherence, whether in the home, the workplace, classroom, or sitting around a table. As more individuals radiate heart coherence, it builds an energetic field that makes it easier for others to connect with their heart. So theoretically, it's possible that enough people building individual and social coherence could actually contribute to an unfolding global coherence. In other words, you bless the area that you're sitting in feeling like that, and it spreads to others around you and to the area where you live. So far, the researchers have discovered that the heart communicates with the brain and body in 4 ways. Neurological communication, that's the nervous system. Biophysical communication, pulse wave. Biochemical communication, the hormones. And energetic communication, electromagnetic fields. Quote, heart math research has demonstrated that different patterns of heart activity, which accompany different emotional states, have distinct effects on cognitive and emotional function. During stress and negative emotions, when the heart rhythm pattern is erratic and disordered, the corresponding pattern of neural signals travel from the heart to the brain, inhibits higher cognitive function. This limits our ability to think clearly and remember and learn and reason and make effective decisions. In contrast, the more ordered and stable pattern of the heart's input to the brain during positive emotional states has the opposite effect. It facilitates cognitive function and reinforces positive feelings and emotional stability. Gratitude and positive feelings can change the whole world, and it gets deeper. Quote, every individual's energy affects a collective field environment. That means that each person's emotions and intentions generate an energy that affects the field. A first step in diffusing social stress in the global field is for each of us to take personal responsibility for our own energies. We can do this by increasing our personal coherence and raising our vibratory rate, which helps us become more conscious of the thoughts, feelings, and attitudes that we are feeding the field each day. We have a choice in every moment to take heart the significance of intentionally managing our energies. This is the free will or local freedom that can create global cohesions by Dr. Deborah Rosman, the president of Quantum Intech. Overall, this type of work suggests that human consciousness in general can change the world. One study, for example, was done during the Israel-Lebanon War in the 1980s. 2 Harvard University professors organized groups of experienced meditators in Jerusalem, Yugoslavia, and the United States and asked them to focus their attention on the area of conflict at various intervals over a 27-month period. Over the course of the study, the levels of violence in Lebanon decreased 40 to 80% each time a meditating group was in place. In other words, they were praying for peace. And our prayers are heard by Christ, definitely. Now, the average number of people killed during each war each day dropped from 12 to 3, and war-related injuries fell by 70%. So that's amazing. Now, another great example is a study that was conducted in 1993 in Washington, D.C., which showed a 25% drop in crime rates when 2,500 meditators meditated during a specific period of time with that intention, dropping crime rates. This type of information is heavily correlated with quantum physics, as many experiments in that area are as well as parapsychology, that is telepathy, remote viewing, distant healing, indicate similar findings. This holds true as far back as 1999. Statistics professor Jessica Utz at UC Irving published a paper showing that parapsychological experiments have produced much stronger results than those showing a daily dose of aspirin helps prevent heart attacks. Utz also showed that these results are much stronger than the research behind various drugs like antiplatelets. This type of work has statistically significant implications, yet is heavily ignored and labeled as pseudoscience simply because it conflicts with long-held beliefs we have trouble letting go of, but times are changing. Quote, for many years I have worked with researchers doing very careful work in parapsychology, including a year that I spent full-time working on a classified project in the United States government to see if we could use these abilities for intelligence gathering during the Cold War. At the end of that project, I wrote a report for Congress stating that I still think is true. The data in support of precognition and possibly other related phenomena are quite strong statistically and would be widely accepted if it pertained to something more mundane. Yet most scientists reject the possible reality of these abilities without ever looking at data. And on the other extreme, there are true believers who base their beliefs solely on anecdotes and personal experience. I have asked debunkers if there is any amount of data that would convince them, and they generally have responded by saying probably not. I asked them what original research they have read, and they mostly admit that they haven't read any. Now, there is a definition of pseudoscience basing conclusion on belief rather than data. This is from Utes Chair of Statistics Department, UC Irving, Dean Radin, Real Magic. And the takeaway, the conclusion is this. We are our thoughts and our emotions, that's what I would say, but this is what they say here. Emotions and other factors associated with consciousness have the power to transform our inner world in ways we don't fully understand yet. These findings show how consciousness can actually transform the physical and material world, and that is huge. This validates the idea that if we can change our inner world through gratitude, empathy, love, compassion, and meditation, we can make our outer world more peaceful. This article, Science Shows How Gratitude Literally Alters the Human Heart and Molecular Structure of the Brain, was originally created for Collective Evolution, published here under Creative Commons, and this is on Collective Spark. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.